time has been especially gratifying because you're all so young and because you care, because you have good hearts, because deep down you carry within you the roots of your parents and your grandparents. Only optimists can change history. And I think tonight the challenge will be, can NAAP change history by creating for the very first time an Arab-American presence in Hollywood? And I gave my first paper on the TV Arab here in New York City. And I remember I was so excited. I rushed back to the university and I wrote a paper and I said, I'm going to get this published. And that was in 1975. And in 1978, after 54 rejection letters, it was finally published. I want to encourage you to do several things. I want you to think about what Plato said. I'm not a Greek scholar, but I know what Plato said. Plato said, I'm paraphrasing, those who tell the stories also rule society. But when it comes to us, pause. Who is telling the stories? Who's behind the camera? Who's at the computer? Whose fabricated fantasies, visions, and values project and define all Arabs as the godless enemy other? And what are we going to do about it? It's high time we did something about it. I'm sort of fed up going to this organization and that organization saying, let's do something about it. Although I'm a charter member of the ADC and I support and cherish every organization that exists because the people who work there don't earn any money and they don't get any support at all from the community. But the organizations have yet to learn to cooperate with one another. The organizations still have to go to Arab countries on their hands and knees begging for money. They are not truly all-American organizations because they're not funded by all Americans. NAAP is. You are an all-American organization. You're young, you're dynamic, and you're in a position to create change. There's another show called The Unit, where an African-American, the new theme in Hollywood is an African-American man and a white woman killing Arabs. You see it in The Siege. You see it in a movie like The Kingdom. You see it in a TV show like The Unit. We're killing Arabs. It's like going to an amusement park. And we sit there and we watch this and we say, gee, isn't that terrible? But we knew nothing about it. We don't contact the producers. We don't meet with the writers. We just say, gee, aren't they terrible, those people? Well, we have to make our voices heard. And if we don't make our voices heard, whose voices do we want to hear? How much longer are we going to sit on our cheesies and take it? This stereotyping issue has dominated my life of my family for 4 decades now. This image has been with us for more than a century. It's impacted every human being all over the world. Children, grandchildren, parents, grandparents. Everyone has been touched by these images. The movie Arab is the comic book Arab, is the news Arab, is the editorial cartoon Arab. They are images of sameness. Can you imagine what would happen if we humanized Arabs? If we, Mr. Ambassador, as you talked about today, all of a sudden showed the suffering of Palestinians. If there were movies that illustrated Palestinian sufferings, entertainment films like Harrison Ford starring as a Palestinian fighter, freedom fighter, going up against Israeli aggression in I mean, why can't we have movies showing Arabs as victims of terrorism? Because if we do, ladies and gentlemen, think about it. If we humanize Arabs, maybe we'll change our policy. If they become human beings, then all of a sudden we have to re-examine our policy because public opinion begins to change. And when public opinion begins to change, policy begins to change. There are individuals and organizations out there that are doing everything in their power to make sure that this community remains apathetic. This evening, I think this entire conference reminds me of a feast of Arab cuisine. It's been and continues to be as magnificent as an elaborate maza as smooth as Lubna, splendid as shawarma, tantalizing as tabbouleh, explosive as falafel, and as intoxicating as arak.